Test. Good evening, staff, citizens, council. This is the City Council meeting for October 18th, 2016. I'm calling it to order. Clerk Hefter, could you call the roll?
Mayor Beckman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman?
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik?
Present.
Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Hopping?
Here.
Councilmember Valdez?
All right.
Can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. We have an agenda that's been posted and presented to City Council. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll accept that agenda and move to item 4, which is public comment. We give 2 opportunities for people to make public comment. The intent is so that folks who are concerned with issues that are on the consent agenda get an opportunity to express their point of view prior to our consideration of the consent agenda and also prior to the general business items. So this is the first opportunity, and later in the meeting, before we do council reports, there's a second opportunity if necessary. An immediate response should not be expected. Anyone who would like to speak during either public comment session should please sign in on the green sheet. There's a sheet that we keep on the back. I have the one now for this first session. And if someone didn't get an opportunity to sign, I try to give everybody an opportunity to speak, so I'll ask for that. Public comments should be civil. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. We give a 3-minute time limit, and I have a sign-up list with Carol Brisiak.
I'm Carol Brisiak. I live in the 4th District. We have an organization in the state of Colorado that is the State Archives. Reading from their website, it says, the Colorado State Archives is authorized by statute to prepare retention and disposition schedules for state agencies, municipalities, counties, school districts, and special districts in Colorado. These schedules authorize legal destruction of records that are no longer of value to the agency, and they advise the agency officials as to which records must be retained permanently. And then if you go through their website, they have a management manual for the different entities, starting with the county, and they have one for municipalities. In 2008, Council approved the State Archives Record Retention Manual. And can we get the overhead? Probably too small for people to read. But this is from the Records Management Manual for the municipalities. And it's talking about the recording of meetings. It says audio or video recordings of official meetings used to prepare minutes or transcripts of the meeting. That's the definition. For an open meeting, the retention schedule is 6 months after the approval of the minutes. Then it talks about the minutes. Official record of the proceedings of the governing body and supporting documentation of the substantive nature, such as exhibits referenced in the minutes. Retention, permanent, provided that routine material submitted at meetings may be destroyed after 2 years, as long as a summary description is included in the minutes. Important note, minutes of the governing body are considered to be essential municipal records, and the State Archives therefore recommends that the record copy be retained in paper format. It's not news that I'm here to ask for paper minutes. I continually get frustrated with the website trying to research something, not being able to download a video, or the minutes just plain missing from the Lyft website in particular. I have another question that has been puzzling me. If I want to submit something to this council that takes longer than 3 minutes so that it becomes part of the record, how do I do that if the record is a video? And it's a serious question, and I do want an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And we do have scheduled now on the staff study session for December 13th, a portion of that to discuss this whole issue of meeting procedures, first readings, video minutes, and keeping minutes for other types of meetings. So we'll be sure and try to address that issue, particularly the archivist section there, because we want to follow those rules. Pam Chadbourne.
I promise you I didn't talk to Carol at all before preparing this, but I'm here to ask you to make a few changes to the minutes for October 4th that are up for consideration tonight. I want to thank council for making these minutes available in the first place. Early on they weren't, and so I thank you for making them available in the packet for us to see. And also I want to thank the city clerk for chasing all of us down who make comments. My comment is about the 2 public comment sections in the minutes. And I just wanted to see if we could amend some of the lines a little bit. My observation is that some of the people's comments say their position, and other ones just mention the subject. And our sign-in form just asks us the topic. It doesn't tell us what to say, so the burden is on the city clerk to interpret our intent. And on October 4th, I thought our intentions were pretty clear. And so I made some suggested red lines on 4 of the lines for the first public comment, including my own. I wanted my summary to say urban renewal and add harms / Columbine Square self-blighted. And that makes it very traceable and clear what my record is. And the intent of that, some of the people's positions were mentioned, others weren't, so I think all of us ought to have our positions clear or none. And then, just to be fair, and then just for humane reasons, when you read minutes, it's just much funner to see someone's position and not just the topic. It's much more interesting. Especially, I think the second public comment, I had red lines on all 4 of those. All 4 people who stuck around and spoke for the second public comment were against the delay or against urban renewal. And I thought it adds value to the minutes to reflect that. When citizens come and take their time to pay attention to council and to attend and make a comment, it seems to me nice to acknowledge that with a record of their position in the minutes. And boy, it's short, sweet, and I think fair and illuminating for users of the minutes in the future. And finally, I do want to say, like Carol, I want us to go back to fully written minutes. I thought that they were useful before. I still think they are. This is one example of how. So I wanted to ask you to amend the October 4th minutes before passing them. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. That's all I have for people who have signed up to speak. Is there anyone who did not get a chance to sign up? See anybody? This brings us to agenda item 5, which are the consent agenda items. Consent agenda items may be adopted in a single motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item A is ordinance 21-2016, an ordinance on first reading known as the Annual Appropriation Bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, Counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2017.
Pull.
Item 5B is ordinance 22-2016. It's an ordinance on first reading establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the costs of municipal government of the City of Littleton, Counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2017. Item C is ordinance 24-2016, an ordinance on first reading approving the modification of the term of the master services agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management LLC for telecommunications connectivity services.
Pull.
Item D is Resolution 58-2016. It's a resolution adopting the Aspen Grove Business Improvement District 2017 operating plan and budget. Item E is ID 16-246. It's a motion to amend the contract with Waters and Company to include recruitment for a city attorney. Item F is Resolution 46-2016, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving the City of Littleton Title VI Plan. Item G is ID 16-245, certification of the October 4th, 2016 regular meeting minutes.
Pull.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of consent agenda items B, D, E, and F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Prepared to vote?
The motion carries 7-0 unanimously.
This brings us back to consent agenda item A, which was ordinance 21-2016, the ordinance on first reading to be known as the Annual Appropriations Bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, Counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2017. Councilmember Clark, you pulled that item.
It's highly likely that we're going to have tax increment, sales tax revenue collected that needs to be dispersed to lift, regardless of the decision that happens on December, because it takes 6 months to shut down lift. So I think that we should have an appropriation in the 2017 budget, just as I think we should have an appropriation in the 2016 and the 2015 budget showing how much sales tax is being diverted or sent to lift. So I'm not going to vote for the budget until I see information in there that describes what it is that we're actually dispersing and how much we're spending on urban renewal.
I believe the Finance Director can address that issue.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yes, I think during the budget discussions we did inform Council the sales tax increment was $114,040 for 2016, and you will see that as part of the budget amendment for the 2016 budget. We do not have anything appropriated right now in the proposed budget for 2017. We were waiting to see what Council's direction was going to be with lift and urban renewal, but we could definitely come up with an estimate and add that to the budgeted appropriations for 2017.
Okay. I mean, that would be good. I'd like to also see the cost broken out, what we've spent on the attorneys and supporting the lift board. For instance, we videotape their meetings for them, or don't, I guess, depending on whether it's actually a videotape or not.
Just the city expenses for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I could do research on that and come back to council if there were any lift expenses paid by the city. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
Well, I
we
know we were financing the suit against Arapahoe County, for example.
Okay,
I don't know which line item that came out of, how much that is, things like that.
okay, I can talk to the city attorney's office to get that information.
So is council in agreement with the further elaboration on those cost items as presented by the finance director to do that work in anticipation of our second reading? I am in favor. Phil?
Actually, I'm not sure, I know it appears in there, but this is asking for an approval of the 2017 budget, so having the 2016 items are pretty much informational. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be informational, but I'm not sure it's germane to the motion.
I have myself, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember Valdez who have expressed an interest in having it done as was addressed by the finance director. Any other questions or concerns? I don't want to ask, I think one of our requirements on council is when we ask for extensive staff time that we do agree. And so I think that's appropriate to ensure that we agree for that work to be done.
Well, I'd support more information.
Okay, along those lines, Doug, I looked at the lift budget that I think they prepared. I was looking in my notebook there, and I don't see it toward the top, but maybe in July. And that does help identify parts of the issues that we're asking for. That lift budget was adopted by them, I believe, during the summer. So I think that would help break out some of those expenses, but they don't address the part that Councilmember Clark talked about in terms of city staff time or city resources that would not have been part of their budget, but rather part of city operations, if I understand that correctly. So,
yes, and I believe the sales tax increment period is the end of November for 2 out of the 3 sales tax urban renewal areas. So if it is still live by the end of the year, then staff would have to spend time in doing that calculation for that collection period.
It'll actually have to be done even if it's still alive, because it takes 6 months to shut it down. So I think. So even if the vote were to happen now, it has to happen. Even if the vote were to happen in December, you have 6 months of potential sales tax collection, assuming they get over the increment within 6 months. Are we talking about the same thing?
Well, I was just trying to remember the exact wording of the ordinance, because I know council also has the authority to send that increment back to the city as part of that abolishment of LIFT and the urban renewal authorities. So I was trying to remember the exact wording, but there is wording in the ordinance that would credit either the loan or some of the other costs incurred by the city.
Okay. I don't remember the exact wording either at this point, but
so if at all possible, it would, you know, if the urban renewal areas do not exist and we don't have a legal obligation to make that calculation, that would save staff a lot of time.
agreed.
So, all right, we'll see what happens.
A lot of time.
But if you, I guess I need council direction if you want to see that in the 2017 appropriations bill.
Well, if LIFT isn't terminated, and even potentially if it is, depending on how much sales tax is collected in the first 6 months or the first 5 months of 2017, there has to be an appropriation to authorize the transfer of the dollars. So I think you're going to have to put it in the budget. You're going to have to estimate an amount and put it in the budget.
the thing that I'm thinking about in my memory is if we had a grant, for instance, that we believed we would get in the upcoming year, although we were not sure, of course, and we didn't know the exact amount, we did put a best guess in there as a potential revenue, and then with the knowledge that what we got was what we got, and we try to fill that line appropriately. Is that, I think, similar to what we're saying here?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is you have to have the appropriation in order to transfer the money to write a check. Plus, I think the citizens need to know how much this is costing them in revenue that the city would otherwise be getting.
We could put it in the original ordinance, or we could ask council to adopt the budget if that is necessary. I guess those are two options.
You could, the council could amend the budget, obviously, later in 2017 with a more accurate amount. The problem with that is the budget will be printed by then. And so the visibility of what's actually happening and what the amount is less when it's contained in an ordinance that amends the budget document that's already printed up. So that's why my preference is to get it into the 2017 budget.
Yeah, we could definitely come up with an estimate to do that.
So city manager and I had talked about getting information to council on appropriate time schedule. So what are you thinking in terms of this request?
Well, I think a couple of thoughts here. I think if council has some interest in trying to appropriate some money for the TIF in 2017, we certainly as staff can make an estimate of that. And my recommendation is that we just make a conservative estimate here, fairly high, and if it obviously comes in less than that, then fine. The second piece is just a reminder, December 6th, I believe, is the scheduled, correct, yes. You know, for us to bring back a lot of the urban renewal here for second reading here. So I think a lot of the questions that you've been asking here, that's certainly another opportunity for us to kind of bring the complete picture.
December 6th is the
Yeah, December 6th is the scheduled second reading here that council acted on here previously a couple of weeks ago to, date certain for many of those urban renewal areas, including the LIFT board.
Well, that's also the, traditionally, when council has done the catch-up ordinance for the previous year to amend the budget to reflect those kinds of changes that just weren't anticipated when we'd done the budget 18 months earlier, and that is that evening. Also, were you talking about also addressing 2016 budget that night?
Well, I think, my opinion, you have to have a modified budget before you can write the check. Otherwise, you're expending money that hasn't been appropriated. So we got to get the 2016 budget amended at some point in time because we have 114.
And that will be part of the December 6th budget amendment for 2016, yes.
114 or more, because I'm still not sure what's happening with the King Soopers portion of that. So we'll have some amount that needs to be put into the budget.
So I'm going to ask Mark to address this, but I think what we would like to do, we just don't have enough information to move intelligently ahead on this from a council perspective. If you could give us, from the staff perspective, the information we need to know in regards to this discussion.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts here, just for clarification. So if you would like to incorporate into the 27 budget an appropriation here for TIF, we certainly as staff can estimate that and submit that for your second reading. As far as amending the 2016 budget, on December 6th, not only do you have kind of the second reading of urban renewal, but you also have the first reading of the amendment to the 2016 budget. So that's the other opportunity then we have to kind of address this year's budget when it comes to the issue. So I believe the sequencing is actually works well to try to accommodate some of the questions being raised here.
And I'm not exactly sure how to handle the property tax because that's collected by the county and I assume dispersed to LIFT before it gets to us.
Yes, that does not pass through the city, so that would be a direct refund by LIFT back to the taxing authorities.
But it actually is our increment that the county is sending back to them, so I don't know how we represent that. But I think the citizens ought to see that portion of the money also, somehow.
again, we can try to address that for you and try to estimate that at a minimum.
Okay, so with that staff direction, do we have a motion to approve a consent agenda item A, which is the ordinance 21-2016, an ordinance on first reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2017.
So moved with the additional notation of the information requested for December 6th.
Second.
A motion with the amendment for the request from staff work. Are we ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
This brings us to item C, which is ordinance 24-2016. This was the ordinance on first reading approving the modification of the term of a master services agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management, LLC, for telecommunications connectivity services. Councilmember Clark, you pulled this item.
I pull that because the agreement has us indemnifying Comcast for certain actions that take place on the network. I believe the Colorado Constitution prevents us from prevents the city from indemnifying anybody. So I don't think that we can approve a contract that has an indemnification clause that indemnifies Comcast, where we indemnify Comcast. And because I know Bill's going to ask, this is an opinion of an attorney. You might recognize the firm.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to pass this to the clerk also so that she can enter it into the record?
Don't have an extra copy, but I'll be happy to give one to her.
I'll make sure she gets my copy.
Okay.
Councilmember, all I can tell you is that
Can you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I apologize. Good evening. Ken Price, Information Services Director, City of Littleton. There was a First Amendment also to the Master Services Agreement. I just presented both of those to the city attorney for his review. I think, and I'm not the legal expert here, I think the First Amendment addresses your concern about indemnification.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Since this is not necessarily time sensitive, I just would recommend that we just pull this item here for this evening, and we'll review that with our acting city attorney just to confirm that the identification issue has been addressed properly. Obviously, Councilmember Clark is correct. By state law, we cannot indemnify another party, so we'll have to work through that issue.
And the operative item is number 4 in the First Amendment, actually provides for that limitation, being a governmental organization, that we cannot do that. So in conformance with Colorado law, item 4 actually takes that out.
Does it? Okay.
So we still would like to pull this or for further review, or do we have the time?
Sorry, which item 4 pulls it out?
Yeah.
Because item 4.1 is the, I'm sorry.
I would prefer that we pull it. Ken Feldman is the telecom expert. I know he's reviewed this, but if there's a specific question, I'm sure he will be able to address that. I've been on this job a day and a half, so I think that I'd like to have him take a look at it when he gets back from his vacation.
That's fine.
I'm looking, this is really just an amendment on the agenda, then we'll pull this item.
So we need a motion, though, right, to pull that?
That's number 4.
I would like to have a motion because we approved the agenda previously. And now
Right, so I move that we pull item 5C from the agenda.
We have a motion to pull item 5C.
Want to move it to a date certain?
Yeah, you want to postpone it to?
Well, if we pull it, it's off the agenda, and when it's ready to come back to us, they can add it, right?
Yeah, I'll second.
Because, I mean, we're not postponing, it's just pulling it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Council, I wouldn't recommend a date certain. We'll just pull this item and reschedule it after we've had the review. Provides the most flexibility, I think, for the council.
Okay, we have the motion and second. Are we prepared to vote? A yes will be to pull the item.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Make sure I'm right here. I didn't miss one. Okay.
Sorry.
5G will be the ID 16-245, which was pulled by Councilmember Clark. That's the certification of the October 4th, 2016 regular meeting minutes.
I move to approve based on the city clerk's certification, October 4th, 2016 video as the minutes for the October 4, 2016 regular meeting of the City Council.
Do I have a second and we can have discussion? Do we have discussion? Do we have discussion? I have a question about just procedurally how the clerk would like to proceed when suggestions for changes, additions, corrections, or whatever are presented to the council that the council has not seen previously, so we don't bring it up as a request for a change, and how you address that.
There's a couple, is that me? There's a couple of ways that we can deal with that. I can make the changes that council requests and then bring it back to the next meeting, or you can approve it and I'll still make the changes. You can approve it tonight and say with the changes that council tells me to make, or I can make the changes that council requests and then bring it back.
If council hasn't had a chance to review those and feels they need time to do that and would not want to do it during the meeting, how would we delay that? Would we delay that and then just bring this up as a certification on an agenda in the future?
Yes.
And then meantime distribute those changes and see if at that time we could bring up a request, or is that what we would do? Or
Yes.
Okay.
I would just bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay.
With any changes that council lets me know that they would like.
So with the motion and second, we're prepared to vote on item G, and then I'm interpreting then that a no vote is to not certify them with the instruction that we have for the clerk to present them to us again in the future.
Clarification, are we certifying the video minutes or the written?
We're certifying the video.
Okay.
As of right now, the video is our minutes.
So we're not going to make any changes to the video?
So in that case, we could vote to certify the video as we've done traditionally, and still have an expectation for the clerk to provide us her written notes in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can go ahead and proceed on this one with a vote. And we have a motion and a second. And again, a yes would be to proceed with the approval of the video as the minutes. Prepared to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
We have a second opportunity for a public hearing because we have no items on the second reading. We have no items for general business. So this would bring us to agenda item 8, which is public comment. And we have one person who has indicated that they would like to speak. That's Jeannie Erickson.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. Urban renewal is back on the hot seat in Littleton. It is not doing what the former city manager and some city council thought it would do for Littleton. and it does take money away from the city, county, parks, urban drainage, and the schools. Even though there is not a single project in any of the 4 urban renewal plans, money is being taken away from these entities, and it will be siphoned for 25 years. Developers will in our building in Littleton, because they have done their research as to if this is where their business can survive for the long haul, not because of incentives. Believe it or not, developers have money. As Mr. Bingham pointed out at your last City Council meeting, in the last 90 days, there have been 39 development proposals on the website in Littleton. I believe this is worth repeating. In the last 90 days, there is 39 development proposals on the website. It's all about location, 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 and market forces. Littleton is the right location for development to happen, and all of the developments happening here at this time prove this is where it's happening, and this is the place smart developers want to build. We in Littleton are very lucky and should be proud that so many developers think this is a great place to build, and they are all doing it without any urban renewal money. Regarding Columbine Square, on the corner of Bellevue and Federal, the owner of that property, of that business, blighted himself by not renewing any tenants' leases. The general public may not know this, but I spoke with business owners, and they told me they did not choose to leave. As tenants' leases came up, the owner chose not to renew them. Doing this was his way to vacate the property. For what reason, I'm not sure. He does not need any money from Littleton taxpayers. He has plenty of money to develop property on his own. He must have really made a lot of money in the last 27 years on that property to be able to let it sit vacant as an eyesore to the neighbors for the last 2 years. That shows me how much this property owner cares about Littleton, letting an ugly green fence surround his property for the last 2 years and acting like he's blighted when he did it to himself. I am for development, the right kind of development that enhances and matches the character of Littleton, and the kind of development that'll make us proud generations from now.
Jeannie, you're out of time.
Oh my goodness. I would also like to say I would love to go back to 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, I don't have anybody else who's signed up. Pam Chadbourne.
Pam Chadbourne, District 1. I agree with Jeannie, as I said last time. And the owner, Jeannie, was courteous in calling him he, but the truth is this is owned by a real estate investment trust of some sort, which is headquartered in California, but seems to have a lot of affiliates in London and Europe, from what I can see online. And so this isn't a family thing. It may have started out that way, and I believe that the guy who manages the funds principally is one of the members of the family, but this is an investment for a group of investors. It's not benefiting a local family in any way as far as the monetary development is concerned. I forgot I was going to ask this, but Historic Preservation Board was last night, and it was the Monday that should have been a regular meeting. It was held as a study session, and there was no public comment, so I didn't get a chance to say this to them. But they're going to have a joint meeting with you folks in a month and a half, so I'd like council to consider asking staff for something. And that is to reconsider the parking incentive to join the downtown historic district. My understanding from one of the members last night is that Mr. Hopping has actually prepared a study of, or at least a comparison of some other incentives for joining a historic district, which includes parking, but there are others. And So maybe that's a contribution that you can bring to that and help staff get started. But clearly, we have a parking problem in downtown. I live here. I know from talking to my neighbors that we do. And it inhibits the business of many businesses downtown, the lack of parking. We should solve that. And one of the ways is to not make it worse. So one of the ways we are making it worse is having it as an incentive to join the Downtown Historic District. We need to re-examine it because it's harming, it's gotten to the point that it harms us. And there are other incentives. So let's have staff research that. I would like to see all the options. By the way, I've advocated this before. We have a history of bringing one thing and this is what we have to do. And that's not the way to run a railroad or a city. Staff should bring the alternatives, many alternatives, with pros and cons, risks and costs. And then we all, citizens and council and planning board and historic preservation board, can consider the impacts and bring those to the table during this time of joint meetings. So that's a request I have for you, council. Ask staff to bring this to study. Thanks.
Thank you. Carol Brziak.
Carol Brziak, 4th District. I want to elaborate a little bit on the discussion about the budget for 2017. The increment that I believe Doug is asking to be included is increment for the year 2016 that's payable in 2017. So it doesn't matter if you put the brakes on Lyft December 6th, we still owe them the increment for the previous year, which is payable in 2017. So it should be in the budget. I do have a question about how the TIF is calculated. The state law is very clear that anything above the base is increment. It doesn't say if you have a tax shareback agreement with King Soopers, then anything above and beyond the tax shareback is increment. It says anything above the base is increment. And I believe from what I haven't seen the calculation, but what I have received in information leads me to believe that the increment was calculated with the base, with King Soopers included, but the increment was not calculated in the purest sense of what the law intended. So I would encourage you to go and look at the calculations and know that what's being represented in the budget is accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? I don't see anyone. This brings us to agenda item 9, which is our opportunity for comments and reports. 9A is the city manager.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the only report I have is late this afternoon. I did send to all of Council here the draft schedule here for the recruitment of both the city manager and the city attorney. I'd ask that you please make a review of that. And as soon as you can, give me any kind of questions or comments, and I'll try to aggregate all that and work through Waters and Company here to, perhaps address any of your issues. Obviously, time is pretty critical in trying to manage all this, and especially with the holidays coming up. So I do want to try to be responsive to that, and I would just ask for your assistance in trying to help me with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Item B is council members. Let's start with Council Member Cole.
Well, never ready, am I? Just one thing, anybody out there with kids or just likes to dress up for Halloween yourself, this weekend at Aspen Grove is the trick-or-treat night, starting, I have to be there at 3. I think they start around 4. So if you have kids or yourself want to come trick-or-treat at Aspen Grove, please do. Council, I'll look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Nothing.
Let's go over to Councilmember Hopping.
Just a couple things. Littleton Police Department is having a drug take-back on Saturday from 10 to 2, so prescription drugs that are lurking in your medicine cabinet. I know I found some pain pills from a broken collarbone about 5 years ago and that kind of thing. I'm sure we all have those, not broken collarbones, but old pills. So bring them down 10 to 2, and the police department will take them in right here at the city center, 2255 Westbury Avenue.
For those contributions, do you get to make a deduction?
I don't know if that's deductible.
And the question is the valuation at street rate?
That's right. Yes, street value for pain pills. No, but that's the idea, I think. Mr. Bingham's 39 projects have been mentioned a couple of times. I'd like to point out that a lot of those are pretty routine type of projects. It includes Angelo's, and which is not routine, but it also includes other things like parking lots and that kind of thing. So that should not be misconstrued. Lastly, revenues in the city. Our city budget pointed out that 2016 revenues are up 6%. Expenses are up 12%. We're subject to the bleeding called internet sales that have taken a lot of the revenues out of cities all around the country. The Colorado Department of Revenue reported in 2014 that the state had $170 million in online leakage. That's sales tax revenue that was not collected because of internet sales. So 10 years ago, when you bought a shirt or a book or whatever, you bought it at your local store. Now, a certain percentage of the time, a lot of people are buying it over the internet. And even though some companies like Amazon are making steps to bring those retail sales taxes back, the bleeding is still there. I'd like to request, see if there's interest on council, that we have a revenue study. This is a problem that's hit cities all across the country. I think we need to look at that in the long run. We have infrastructure needs we have to address. We certainly have wonderful city services like Omnibus and shopping carts and such that we don't want to discontinue. We have police and fire to contend with and all. And I'd like to see if there is interest to have a revenue study to see what we can do to pay attention to our revenue stream. So
I can add to that comment. Are you completed with your?
That's it.
City Manager, we had talked about the January 10th study session is being open right now. And we were looking to fill it. We do have a list of items we need to fill, but I'm wondering if that's an item that you'd want to move up on the list. And perhaps we could tentatively look at studying something on that date.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just looking at our tentative calendar, I think that probably is the most reasonable date, probably the soonest, just based on the other items that we've got scheduled, unless council is wanting to move maybe some things out of the way. But yes, January 10th would be a date that's probably pretty reasonable if the council is interested in that issue.
Before we have a study, could we define what exactly the study's going to study?
Well, it's best practices in revenue development. What are other cities doing about this? I mean, I'd be glad to lay some foundation with it, work with staff to develop an outline for that. But it's a broad question. We don't really have an expense problem so much as a revenue problem. So what do we do? How do we get there?
We've had a study on sales tax leakage. We had a study just about a year ago on economic resilience that suggested different potential economic or revenue enhancement things. So we've had a number of different studies that address that. I don't know if we're going to trot out one of the old studies and relook at that or update it, or what we're going to do. Are we looking for a tax increase, or?
I'm not presupposing anything. You know, I just think we need to address the revenue leakage that we have, and certainly the foundation that I could lay with the city staff prior to that is to take a look at those old studies, see if there's anything that's applicable. But this is October of what year is it? 2016. So I think it'd be a good idea to take a fresh look at some of these, because these are problems that continue to morph now, and I would suggest that some of the old revenue studies may not be appropriate in today's world.
So we're looking at leakage specifically.
We're looking at revenues, period. And leakage is a part of that. But if you want to presuppose it by bringing up tax increases or anything, I'm not thinking tax increases. I'm thinking, what do we do about revenues? It could, and maybe other cities have good solutions to that that don't include tax.
Well, our sales and use tax in 2015 went up 8%. 8% is a pretty healthy increase. If we're not happy with 8%, maybe what we ought to do first is set a goal on what we think the revenue increases ought to be. And then once we've established that, then we could go off and look at different mechanisms to achieve that rate of increase. But just to say we need more, without defining how much more, I think is not very focused.
Well, it may not be focused in your mind, Mr. Clark, but when our expenses are exceeding our growth is exceeding our revenue growth, something's got to give. And we need to address that in a proactive manner rather than waiting to see what will happen.
I would echo this as a first step, is taking a look at what is happening now. By the time we get to January 10th, most of the lame duck session will have occurred, and whether the U.S. Congress does address the Main Street Fairness Act, and so we'll have some idea as to what is happening with regard internet sales. I also personally believe that having information as to what other municipalities around the country, or sometimes it's states that are looking at this item and what they're doing in the face of what they're addressing, because our broad issues of maintenance expenses are not unique in that, and what other jurisdictions are doing to address that. I think, and so taking a look first, as a first step, it may not be the last step, but as what is happening with regard revenue development at the municipal level and what opportunities or circumstances are happening to deal with that would be helpful.
Any other comments?
I would agree. I think it's part of our responsibility to look at that, look at our revenues in addition to obviously our expenses. We spend a great deal of time on the budget, and we kind of evaluate expenses all year long as things occur. Having a study session, having an opportunity to gather some information, learn some things, experience what other people may be experiencing, understand some of the national ramifications, as Phil indicated, which actually do have an impact on our community. I don't see any harm in that at all. A study session discussing and sharing information similar to actually part of what we're doing right now is, I think, a great benefit. And I think it's an opportunity for us to get some issues and some conversation going publicly also, that it may be some things that we need to consider in the future, maybe some things that we need to, that we're doing well, that we want to continue. We don't know those, and I agree. I think having a kind of a broad-based revenue discussion is frankly, I think it's part of our job as policymakers for the community.
Other comments? Peg?
Well, let's have at it in a meeting. Let's get whatever information we have that's new and review some that maybe we already know, but.
So the challenge is we're looking 2.5 months in the future, so there's plenty of opportunity to put together a real scope of what it is that we're going to try to identify as a problem, as well as potential solutions.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just adding to that, I guess listening to the council conversation, my suggestion allows staff to put together kind of a white paper on this topic, circulate it with council just to make sure we're kind of hitting the target, I guess, you're meeting your expectation. I think, too, we'll have to kind of evaluate, staff's capacity to provide some of this information, by, what I say, January 10th. Perhaps we may have to move that a little bit here just based on your expectation and our ability to get you the information. But I'd like to start with maybe circulating this white paper.
Okay. Councilmember Cernanek.
Yes, actually in the vein of economic development, there was a counselor presentations at last week's meeting of the Economic Development Group of the Chamber. It was honorable counselors from Belgium, Finland, and Russia. It was a very interesting discussion about both businesses there looking for business here and possible locations, as well as opportunities for businesses here to do more international business and what opportunities might exist on that front. And that was good. And I'm looking to get the PowerPoint presentations from that. So at least in particular, get them to Denise Stevens. Second, last Thursday, Councilmember Clark and I had a chance to have the first coffees with council. And as I recall, both Doug and I refrained from any donuts at Dunkin' Donuts that particular morning. But it was pretty well attended with folks, although probably the biggest part of my observation, and I don't know whether Doug would want to chime in, is the length of the drive-up line that exists at that Dunkin' Donuts, which is at the corner of Platte Canyon and Mineral. And it was actually, they have it set up so they can circle the building, and they actually do circle the building. So it's a good place. Thirdly, Friday, there was a presentation at the Buechner Breakfast on the academic perspective of what is happening in the oil and gas industry. I know it's not something that's from a drilling or reaping perspective directly impacting the city, but I know that at least in my neighborhood there's a number of engineers that are involved in the oil and gas industry, so that the employment side of that is something that's important to us. And from yesterday morning's meeting at the wastewater treatment plant, I'm looking forward to getting more information about the future modeling and how that might impact any capital costs for compliance and what that might do with regard to our license capacity. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding the comments we've heard, Paul, and then again this evening regarding the project development activity list that we have online. When the Community Development Department put this program online, I think it was a very great asset to understanding what's going on and kind of what the status of it is. For example, I've used it a number of times as I continue to get comments from people, and I'm sure everybody up here, particularly Councilmember Hopping, regarding the Circle K on Bellevue, and it gives you an opportunity to see kind of the status of those things. What's important about this list, though, is that you do look at the list closely, because things like the Trailmark Fire Station are still on there, and I think they have 2 or 3 listings. Angelo's is on there, and it's got 3 or 4 listings. There's parking lots in churches that are being remodeled. So anything that requires some level of work going through the communication, or I keep wanting to say communication, but through the Community Development Department, winds up on this list. So there is a representation of everything, but it's a whole bunch of, there's a bunch of, it's a varying degrees of things. So it's not 39 developments, but there's 39 different listings on here. Some of them are 4 and 5 under the same thing. Again, Angelo's has 4 on here. There's churches with their parking lots. Breckenridge Brewery's got a couple things that they're doing. Carson Nature Center is redoing their parking lot. So it's inclusive of absolutely everything that's going on, not just brand new, out of the ground, vertical development. That's all I have.
Okay. I want to just review what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and ask a question that's been asked of me tonight on one of our schedules. So coming up is a study session next week, and we're going to be talking with the representative from Waters and Company regarding the recruiting, and we'll have had an opportunity to meet with him individually prior to that meeting, so hopefully each council member's gotten that scheduled. I believe they have now at this point. And the intent was that, just clarification for everybody on council, because I had this question, it was answered for me. The 15-minute blocks was to try to find a schedule that would fit with the council members' varied schedules, but the intent was to give you up to an hour if you needed that time. So, and then see where we go from there. So hopefully you have 45 minutes or an hour scheduled, each of you. I haven't looked at that, but that was the intent. And then that's going to be a meeting that will be the joint meeting with the South Suburban Parks and Recs to review their management plan. And we're anticipating that's actually a pretty long period of time. I've been told as long as 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. So we need to be ready for that one. November 1st is the regular meeting, and we'll have regular items for that meeting. That brings us up to November 2nd, which is the Sunset Hike Lee Gulch Overlook dedication. I wanted to mention that tonight because we may not all have it on our schedules, but this is the redo that Urban Drainage and South Suburban Parks and City, significant redo for the Sunset Hike at Lee Gulch Overlook, which is the path that goes down from St. Mary's down to the river, basically, and has the small lake there. It's just a little bit north of Breckenridge Brewery. That's quite an improvement, and that's going to be at 5 p.m. on November 2nd. Then the last item to mention was November 8th is election night. That is a study session night for us, and a couple members of council have asked me if we wanted to not have a meeting that night since election night is a priority for elected officials. And I had not addressed that with council prior tonight, and what we had scheduled was the city manager was going to present his priorities draft work plan. That, remember, we talked about our issues that we needed the city manager to address, and his response was that he would develop a work plan to take that down into the staff level. That's the night that was scheduled to be presented. So, council, I do have a request from a couple members not to meet that night. Any discussion on that?
I would support if we can move that study session. I think I would support that. I think it's an important, we've got some local issues, and I know we've got folks up here who have candidates, so that'd be fine with me.
I agree.
I think it'll be a very unfocused meeting if we do have a meeting. So I think canceling, I think it's
no cell phones, no iPads.
Maybe the acting city manager would prefer
we'd have to go back to paper.
Yeah.
I think we should have a study session on conflict resolution if it's election night.
Too late.
I don't agree. I know that we don't currently have a meeting scheduled on the 29th. If we wanted to exchange it for that in case to keep it timely, we may want to consider having that on the 5th Tuesday and just move it to that point in time. It keeps it out of the holiday week, which is the week prior, but we could do it on the 29th.
Peg?
Well, I would say if there's something timely, then we should meet. We're going to get out of here tonight fairly early. And if we don't meet, we're liable to be out there killing each other anyway, so I'm teasing. But I don't see a reason not to meet if we have something timely to be meeting on.
So, Phil, which way were you feeling on that then?
I'd be willing to skip the 8th, let us enjoy whatever campaign celebrations or not we have, and be able to watch the poll results and exchange it for November 29th and use that fifth Tuesday. That keeps us having that discussion before the beginning of 2017, which I think is important, and gives us an opportunity to get together at that point in time. So I'd rather see it on the 29th than the 8th, and I know that takes us out of the fifth Tuesday, but I'll exchange it for that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm getting enough nods to switch that over. So again, just for clarification, the fifth Tuesday is not really a day that council routinely schedules anything. We do the first and third and second and fourth by routine. The fifth Tuesdays are usually left open. They've been, in the past, we've had things on those dates. The only issue is I want to make sure nobody has vacation or out of town scheduled, knowing that it was a fifth Tuesday.
So I do have a question, though. The fifth Tuesday is after Thanksgiving, a few days before that. So is that going to pose any problem for any kind of agenda preparation and issues and whatever?
There's Thanksgiving in October.
Oh, this is November 29th.
We're talking November.
So you have to move forward to or move.
Well, actually, if he was planning to prepare the information for November 8th, we could get it on November 8th and then discuss it on the 29th.
Oh, no.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'd rather work through that schedule just prior to the 29th and get you that information. So that won't be an issue for staff.
Excellent,
So,
thanks.
so you're good, your staff is good with the 29th?
We're just.
29th of October.
Of November.
Good.
Of November.
Of November.
Fifth Tuesday.
Election is November 8th, we've got a fifth Tuesday. No.
So you're moving it to the end of November
The end of
rather than
November.
the end of October? Okay.
Yes.
It was either that or the 32nd of October.
Yeah.
That's what it was scheduled.
So Doug is
fifth-
just catching up with
The
us.
fifth Tuesday
Okay.
in November.
Slow down.
November
Slow down for
29th. Okay, and we're
Could
still
you
good
chart
with it.
that out for me?
Do we have any further discussion? Because I'm done with my report and I'm ready to adjourn.
Let's go.
We're adjourned.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you.